Okay. Hopefully this will work. My computer sometimes is a bit slow. Okay, so we will begin with the Mishnah. We're in the fourth chapter of Avot, and in the sixth Mishnah, I will open it up for us and we can learn it together. Okay. Actually, I think it was the seventh. Did you learn the sixth Mishnah last week? I'm just a bit confused because I had prepared the seventh. Does anyone remember what you learned last week?
Don't make a Torah a crown.
Don't make crown of the Torah.
Don't make crown of the Torah.
I think it was the fifth.
The fifth, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. 1 second. I'm trying to manage everything here tonight alone. Here. Yes, perfect. Okay. Yes, so we're up to the sixth Mishnah. Yes. So the sixth Mishnah is a continuation, in a sense, to the last Mishnah, and talking about respect and honor for the Torah. Let's just see the Mishnah, and then we can discuss it a bit. Does anyone volunteer to read out the Mishnah for us?
I can do it.
Thank you. Perfect.
Rabbi Yosef said, whoever honors the Torah is himself honored by others, and whoever dishonors the Torah is himself dishonored by others.
So, when you see the Mishnah, maybe it in other words, it's saying whoever honors the Torah is honored by others. I guess it brings forward the question that we've seen before in Pirkei Avot. What is the notion of honor and respect in the first place? And the Hebrew literal translation is that when it says he is himself honored, gufo is the literal translation would mean his body. In other words, it's not himself only, but that his essence is respected by others. And whoever dishonors the Torah is himself dishonored by others. And the word dishonor, just looking first at the words before we discuss the meaning itself, the word to michalel is a very interesting word, and it's not used so often. We have, for example, we have the same word that is used when we say someone who michalel et Shabbat, someone who not only dishonors but disrespects and also does not keep the Shabbat. So, for example, if someone was driving a car on the Shabbat, so it would be called Chilul Shabbat. The word Chilul, right, is, so here you see that it's used here in the sense of dishonored, and that it's also used in terms of a Shabbat, and not, you can also say Mechalel Shem Shamayim, that if someone is doing something against God, it's a disgrace of God's name. So all of these together gives us a sense that it's not only it's not only a question of respect, but something much deeper. And also something that I would say we represent. Because if we are people who represent the Torah in this world. And I would say that on the positive side or on the counter side of anti-Semitism, when we see how much focus, right, the world always puts on us, it's because we represent something. And it's not true. And in that sense, whatever you do as a Jew, whether we like it or not, we know very well that it is noticeable by others. And we see that in the last half a year, specifically about any action that Israel takes, right? Is it proportionate? Is it not? Is it according to the United Nations? And without going to the whole hypocrisy of many of the discussions, the point that is that we represent something in what we do. But the word, I want to go back to the literal word of chilul. If anyone is a bit knowledgeable in Hebrew, what is the root word of chilul?
One question is like the same like chole, is the same like chole? The same shoresh?
No, the shoresh, the root of chole is chet lamet hey. It could be that it's similar because many times the Semitic roots are and I'll strengthen your question in a bit because it is connected. But the chet lamed lamed is actually emptiness. The word emptiness, right? Or actually, it's interesting because the word is used also to dance is the same word as the chilul. Why to dance? Because you're setting a circle, and in the circle is emptiness. So you're creating in a round circle. The middle of that is actually emptiness. 1 second, my kids have entered, so I'm just gonna escape to a quiet room. 1 second. They came back from the matzah baking, so 1 second. Okay, so what is the connection between disrespect and emptiness? Does anyone have any idea?
If you don't have respect for others, you will be left alone with a lot of emptiness.
Okay, thank you. So being left alone is not being full. And I think just to take it one step further, is that also the idea is that if someone is connected to something, he is full with it. If we are learning Torah, then the Torah fills us, and it's not only, and I would say that is a big, or perhaps the most precise difference between the academia and learning, right? How do they teach the Bible in the academia, right? And when we learn out of respect, because if you're looking for only superficial, right, superficial questions, or you're looking for something that actually fills you inside. So if we are keeping the Shabbat, it fills us inside. But not only that, the Shabbat in its own essence, if you do not keep the Shabbat, you are emptying it of its holiness. In the same way that if you don't act properly, you are making the world void of respect. So it takes the level of not only, in other words, I can be in my own private room and I can be disgraceful to the Torah. In what way? Well, there's a physical way. I can take the Torah and, God forbid, throw it on the floor and be disrespectful to it. But I could also be disrespectful in regard to the fact that it's God's book, in regard to the fact that when I'm learning, I have the deepest respect for the wisdom that has been passed down for thousands of generations of God as he gave it on Mount Sinai and passed it on through the generations. So that the respect that we have is very difficult, I would say, to put our finger on it. But if I walk into a room and there's a book of Torah there, or let's take the Torah scroll, for example. So, of course, when it's taken out of the Aron Kodesh, out of the Holy Ark on Shabbat, we should have the greatest respect for it. We stand up, we walk over to, in respect to it. Many people have for example, the custom when we read from the Torah on the Shabbat, that we will actually stand up while the Torah is being read, and as well as if we walk up and we can kiss the Torah out of respect because it's so dear to us. In Malmo, when I was there in the shul, for example, it was very important for me to, whenever I took out the Torah scroll, that I would take it and give the women a chance to also walk up and kiss the Torah as well, because it's the respect that we all have for the Torah. It's not something that is only that should be only. It's the opportunity given to the men. So just to mention that as well. But the idea of respect is, I think you can feel it in the way that we act towards something. So Rabbi Yossi is saying that the way that we respect the Torah is something that remains for us even when the Torah is not present. And that if we are learning Torah out of respect, then that, I would say, that sense of fulfillment, the sense that it fills you with something, is something that continues with on afterwards. And that others will feel that energy, you can say spiritually, when you walk even when you walk into the next room. And if you have the humbleness to respect the Torah, then others will sense that and also have respect for you. So therefore, if you're looking for just, I would like others to respect me, then it's not going to work, because if you're just full of yourself, then it's not going to work. But when you have respect for the Torah, that creates a humility in you that then creates that sense for others as well, and they will feel a deep respect for you, for the person that you are. So, on the other hand, one who empties the Torah of its respect. And I would say, in many sense, I remember when I was learning my bachelor's degree in Jewish history and contemporary philosophy. It was in an Israeli university, and I was actually shocked because one of the university teachers wanted to make a point that he had no respect for the Torah at all. And all he did in all of his classes was complete contempt, to say that as it is written and as you religious people believe, and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying, I wasn't coming to have an argument, but just this disrespect that was just there. Here we are many years later, and I still recall that complete disregard and disrespect. And I would say, take it one step further, that it's not only a question of what you respect. We respect the Torah for what it is, but it's also having respect for others for what they respect, whether it's something that you respect as well. The very notion of sacredness, the very notion of having something that is deeply respected, is something that we can recognize, and that is true for all religious people. I would say that you have the notion of sacred items. You have something which is very important to you, something which fills the space. So we should have respect for others and not contempt for anyone if they have something which is sacred to them. But the warning from Rabbi Yossi is saying that if we have disregard for the Torah itself, then that person will find it that others will have disregard for him. Because at the end of the day, what the Mishnah is saying here is that the Torah is something which influences us and the people and the person that we are. So if we're sitting and learning it, if our lives are filled with the Torah, then that will create a respect in wherever we are, and the opposite is true as well. So this follows the previous Mishnah, because the previous Mishnah was giving a very strong warning, telling us that the Torah, because it is so powerful and because it fills the space so much, you can fall into the trap in which you take the honor from the Torah and put it upon yourself. And in that sense, you lose your disregard for your own life because you're disgracing what is being given. So here, Rav Yossi, or the reason that the Mishnayot were put together, is to say that that is true, but also on the positive side, and when one respects the Torah, you will find that others will respect you for who you are as well. And we also have a commandment to respect the rabbis. And the Talmud discusses, wait, well, do we respect the rabbi for who he is? And the answer is no, for what he represents. And in the same sense, I would say that all respect, when you have respect, for example, for a king or a queen, what are you respecting? Are you respecting the person? Well, if you would meet that person in the street and you wouldn't know that he or she was the king or the queen, then you wouldn't have the same respect. So you're respecting the fact that they represent the nation. And I would say that in previous, in the countries, even even in the Nordic countries, it used to be much more than it is today, the sense of representation, but still, you had this question in the UK just a couple of years ago. If a prince decided or a princess decides, well, we don't want to be the prince and princess anymore, we just want to be a regular person. But no, you represent something much more and you don't actually have a choice. In the same sense, when someone is a rabbi or is presenting the Torah, is teaching the Torah, so you represent that for the people. And that's what they get to know through you, is God's word through you. So you have to be humble towards that, but also it is a huge responsibility. So it's a simple Mishnah, but not so simple to follow up as many of the Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot, because to take that with us to say, okay, well, if I'm now a person of Torah, doesn't matter how much I learned, but if I've decided that my life is a life of Torah, of mitzvot, my life is one in which I'm following the words and following the wisdom of the Torah, then in that sense, it's also a responsibility. But as I said before, it's not only that, because as the Jewish people, whether we like it or not, we represent something. And therefore we have to, if we respect what we represent, then others will hopefully respect it as well. So do we have, I wanted to go forward into the Haggadah a bit and a bit about Seder night. Is the Mishnah clear to you? Or does anyone have any questions or comments? So, okay, just to find the summary of what we've learned in this very short Mishnah, I would say is very clear, but then don't get me wrong, you're not supposed to walk into the room and say, well, you have to respect me because I am following the Torah, but rather it's something that I would say on the opposite. If we want to see if Rabbi Yossi is right, then we should, I would say if we are acting properly, then we should be careful about how we act, and then we should see if that is effective in terms of how our relations are with others. And I would also add that the more we learn Torah, the more humility we should have, and therefore it should help us with relations, because many times the issues that we have in terms of relationships and arguments comes from the fact that perhaps we are a bit less humble than we should be. So if we have the Torah with us, maybe it will remind us of that, and then it will help us just put our own ego aside and learn to accept and to be humble in accepting others as well. Okay, so I would like to go on from here to, I would say, perhaps one of my favorite Jewish holidays, if not my favorite, but for sure it is my favorite at the moment, because Pesach is just around the corner, and every time we get close to one of the holidays, I get very excited about it. And So right now, just finishing baking our matzot for Pesach, the thoughts of Pesach really come forward. And one of the central themes of Pesach is the fact that we give children a lot of space. And one of the most amazing halachot that we have in Pesach, which actually, unfortunately or sadly this year, could be very relevant for some of the people I'm thinking of, especially the hostages. So the Talmud asks the following question, which we could ask ourselves, how is that even possible? But what happens if someone is alone on Seder night, completely alone? So we know that the Seder night begins with the questions of Manishtana, right? We have the 4 questions that are asked by our children. So what would you say would be the case, right, if someone is alone? Do you only say the story of leaving Egypt, or is there a point to asking the questions itself? And we are taught that if someone is alone, you should ask yourself the question. So it's a very strange thought, right? Because imagine, right? Well, maybe sometimes we do that. Oh, where did I put my coffee? Where did I put my glasses? But those are right questions that we think to ourselves. But what are we asking? What is the point of the questions itself? And the reason that I mentioned the hostages, of course, is that imagine if when we talk about the darkness, imagine if some of the hostages are alone on Seder night and they know it's Seder night and that they're sitting there. And I saw a beautiful initiative that has gone global, that people leave an empty chair on this Seder night for the hostages, and even maybe have the name of someone, of one of the hostages there with you, and send your energy, send your positive energy, and say, you're with us. You know, we're leaving a space for you. We know that the tradition is that we leave that we pour an extra cup for Elijah the prophet for the redemption. So in that sense, we can also pour an extra cup and have in mind the hostages that won't be able to be eating the matzah. For sure, they have the maror, they have the bitter herbs more than any of us, and that they're having that for us. And may Be'ezrat Hashem be the last time that we have this level of bitterness of Am Yisrael. But thinking of the fact of if we're alone, why would we ask the questions? Anyone have any idea? What's the point of asking a question? Well, if you know the answer, then why are you asking the question? If you don't know, then why are you asking? Anyone have any idea?
To fulfill the mitzvah that you need to make the 4 questions in Seder Pesach, maybe?
Okay, so we have like you're saying, Paula, we have the idea that we have the Seder and we follow it as it is, as it's been followed for thousands of years. So we're not going to change it, right? Because it's very important to connect to the whole tradition of as it's done. And the word Seder means order. So you follow the order as it should be, and we don't skip any parts, right? So that for sure is an important point, right? That we're connecting to a tradition which is perhaps one of the oldest traditions that we know. And one of the things that we do in the Haggadah itself is we relate the tradition itself. We say this is what our rabbis used to do 2,000 years ago, and this is how we used to do it during the time of the temple. And so one level is to follow the order. But the other level is, I would say that the questions themselves are awakening us to asking questions. And this is something very connected to children, because when we were children, or for those of us who are still children, my youngest son, Kedem, for example, sometimes I just have to tell him he's a very curious child and he's very smart and he loves to learn. So if he's around me, I cannot imagine him not asking me, wait, what is this? And what is this? And why is that? And that's how he learns. So sometimes, and maybe it connects a bit to what we were talking in the Mishnah, is that sometimes we forget to ask the questions. Sometimes we forget to notice. Sometimes we don't have also, we think we know things too much. And we have to just open our hearts to realizing that sometimes maybe there's an opportunity. Yes, we know it, but maybe there's an opportunity to learn something new. So the whole idea of questions itself, the questions open us up. And the reason that we give it over to the children, if they're there, is because we're reminding ourselves that Seder night is not about knowing, it's about storytelling. It's about opening our hearts. And in that sense, it's very interesting. If we look at the Haggadah itself, then we, just after the four questions, we have the four children. And the four children, we have, right, the wise, and we have the Rasha, who is, right, the evil. And then we have the simpleton, right, the naive one. And then we have the one who doesn't know how to answer. So it's very strange because none of them actually match up. The Chacham is the wise one, so you could have the unwise one, you can have the stupid one. But instead of the wise one, you have the evil one. And then you have, right, the one who doesn't know how to answer, and then you have the naive one. How? So they're not peers for sure, and they don't match up. And then one of the questions is that if we look at the answers that are given, maybe I can open up the Haggadah. Let's see if I can manage just to do that quickly. I didn't have a chance before. One second. Okay, so the Torah relates to four types of sons: one who is wise, one who is wicked, one with a simple nature, and one who does not know how to ask. But I want to look very carefully, not at the sons themselves, but if we look here let's look at the questions that they answer, that they ask, and let's see if they make sense. So the wise son, what does he say? What are the testimonies, the statutes and laws that the Lord our God commanded you? And you must tell him the laws of Pesach. After eating the Pesach offering, one does not eat anything more. So when I look at this, first of all, it doesn't seem so wise to me, because he's asking a very simple question. What is he asking? What are the testimonies, the statutes and laws that the Lord our God commanded you? And what do you answer him? You don't give him any depth. You don't answer anything which tells him anything about even the story of Egypt. What are you answering him? You're answering, giving him halacha and telling him, well, after we eat the Pesach, we do not eat anything anymore. Let's look to the next one. You understand the question? That doesn't make much sense to us, right? Unless anyone has any explanation. Like, what is the wise son actually doing, and what are we trying to answer him? Let's continue on, and then we'll see if any of this makes any sense. The wicked son, what does he say? What is this service to you? What is the service to you? To you, he says, not to him. When he sets himself apart from the community, he denies the very core of our beliefs. And you must set his teeth on edge and tell him, because of this, the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt, for me and not for him. Had he been there, he would not have been redeemed. Again, we have the wicked one, and he says, what is this service to you? And he's a bit, the way of his talking, he's saying, what is this whole thing about? And he sets himself apart, and because he sets himself apart, he denies the very core of our beliefs. Again, very strange. He doesn't say, I don't believe in any of this. He doesn't say, I don't believe in God. So just by setting himself apart, in other words, just by him saying, what is this to you? Then he's already considered a wicked person, so much so that he would not have been redeemed from Egypt. Let's go on to the next one. The simple-natured son, what does he say? What is this? And you must tell him, with a strong hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the grip of slavery. Let's look at the last one. And the one who does not know how to ask, you must open the story for him. As it is said, you should tell your child on that day, because of this, the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt. If we look at the 4 sons, so the Torah tells us we have a commandment for the Torah which says, you shall tell your child on the night of Pesach the story of Egypt. So which sons do we actually keep this mitzvah? If we look at the answers that we're giving the sons, right? So the first one, the wise one, are we telling him anything of the story of Pesach? We're not telling him anything. We're just telling him telling him in a halacha. The second one, we're sending him away from the table and telling him we don't want you here. So we're not telling him anything about the story of Egypt. The third one, the simple-natured one, he asks the simplest question. He's saying, what is this? And what are you answering him? You're finally telling him, well, this is with a strong hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the grip of slavery. So finally, with the third one, who's not the wise one, and he's not the wicked one, you're finally, as a dad or as a mom, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and telling him the story of Egypt. And then with the final one doesn't even know how to ask, so you open the story for him. And again, you're telling him very simply, as the Torah says, that we do this because this is the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt. So in a very strange way, the last two, who seem to us a lower level, right, of child, right, the one who doesn't know it all, a simple son, and then the other one who's just asking a very simple question, they're the ones that we actually do the mitzvah. Whereas the first two, we don't. So it ends up very strange. And I think the biggest question is actually with the first son. Because the Rasha, right, the one who's wicked, the one who sits there, and I think one of the questions, I remember which rabbi who spoke about the fifth son is the one who doesn't even show up, right? But one of the questions we can ask about the evil son is, what do you want? Okay, so he's giving you a cold shoulder. Maybe he's a teenager in his teenage years, right? So he's not so, and he's like, oh, I don't want to be here, but he's there anyway. So why are you so difficult with him? Shouldn't you be open and accepting him and saying, I'm so glad you're here? Instead of this, you say, oh, I wouldn't have sent you out of you. If you were there, God would have left you in with the Egyptians, building the pyramids till this day. Right? Is that the way we educate our children? So that's a difficult one. But actually the most difficult is the first one, because he's supposed to be the wise, and he doesn't even, and what do we say? We tell him about the halacha, that we say nothing about the actual story, when the Torah tells us we're supposed to be telling a story on Pesach. So I want to put all of this this question, just looking at this, and give this a general idea which I think can answer, but the questions maybe are better than the answers, which Seder night also teaches us, because we start off with questions and then we start telling stories, and then at the end of the Seder night, I invite you to ask yourself whether we actually answered the questions that the kids asked us in Manishtana at the beginning. They ask simple questions, and then we, like complicated adults, start telling this whole story. And then by the time they've forgotten the questions, then we're on to eating, and then they're already falling asleep with their heads on the table. So I invite you to look at the questions and see if we actually answer them during Seder night. But here we have the 4 questions, and then we have 4 sons. So we see during Seder night also the idea of 4 comes up many times. We have the 4 cups of wine, and we have the 4 sons and the 4 questions. So, but let's just look at I'd like to share an idea with you, which actually connects to the Mishnah that we were learning before. Sometimes when we are wise or too wise, we don't look around us. Sometimes when we think we have the answers and we don't open ourselves to questions, or we think we're asking the right question, or we think we are wise, we're not open to listening to the story. One of the most basic ideas of Seder night that we say in the Haggadah later on is that every single person must imagine to himself as if he is leaving Egypt. So does that mean that we should all go and buy ourselves Egyptian gowns right now and dress up as if, right, we're stuck in Egypt? The idea is obviously that Egypt symbolizes for us something. The word Mitzrayim in Hebrew actually means a mitzar is something constricted, something which is very narrow. On Pesach night, we have to allow ourselves to dream that we can leave anything which is keeping us in slavery in our lives. And each and every one of us has something which is keeping us enslaved. What does slavery actually mean? Slavery means I'm not a free person. And slavery in a deep sense means I don't believe that I can change. The difference between a slave and a free person is that the slave doesn't believe he has any choice, whereas a free person can be doing the same things but out of choice. Many of us can have an occupation, we can be working, and we can either be enslaved to that job because, well, we have no choice, because I have to work, because I have to make money, or we can say this is my choice in life because this is what I want to be doing. And that the difference is only inside of us. We can be doing the same thing out of freedom and out of slavery. So each person has to imagine for himself or to think for himself on Seder night, what is it that I am enslaved to? What is it that is not allowing me to be a free person? And in that sense, to really imagine on Seder night, this is the change. Because if the biggest miracle was not only that God let us out of Egypt, but we let ourselves out of Egypt. That we let ourselves out of the mindset that had been set for us by the Egyptians. And we see that in modern day times as well. When you look at the civil rights movements, for example, right? You have people who decided we will no longer accept the situation and we will change it because we are free people. And the notion of being a free person, to follow up the idea, right, of that movement, is to say, I have a dream. Because a slave is someone who is given up on dreaming. A slave is someone who just accepts reality for what it is. Whereas being a slave is, right, something which constricts me, confines me to not changing it all. Someone who is a free person is someone who really believes that tomorrow morning I can change. There's nothing that is stopping me from making that change. So when you look at the movements without human history, you see that many of the revolutions that came about in which people tried to fight the slavery, but didn't do so through finding their own freedom, they became the same persecutors that they were trying to free from them, free themselves of. And it took less than a generation in some cases, in which the same people who caused the revolution in the name of freedom used the system of the freedoms in order to enslave the people after them. So that's not being a free person. Being a free person is to dream of freedom and to give the other the freedom and the space where in interaction with me. And in that sense, that free space goes back to the Mishnah we were talking before, because the word lecholel is to allow free space, right? To either I take up the space and I empty it of the respects, or I allow space in the space that I am in, and therefore give freedom to the other. And in that sense, Seder night is a very personal night, but it's also connecting to the others around us. So going back to the question, why is it so serious that we say that the Rasha, the wicked, has no place at our table? Because if you shut everyone else and you say, I'm going to manage myself without the others around me, and I'm not even a part of a community, then you're not going to reach that freedom together with us as a nation. But on the other hand, the wise person is not much better. The wise person is so wise that he's not even really asking any questions that are personal to him. He's just saying, oh, I sat in the yeshiva for 12 years and I know all of it, so I'm just going to ask a question that seems to be wise. What is it that this is all about? What is God telling us? What should we be doing? He's completely detached. And what is the answer that we give him? The halacha is that after we eat the Pesach, right, we don't do anything else. Why? Because the Pesach is the taste of freedom in our mouths. Stop talking so much and taste the taste of freedom and be left with it. So in a sense, the Seder night in this way that we're learning now, and one of the most beautiful things is that you can have a different Haggadah. It's the most published Jewish book, I think, after the Tanakh, because you have so many commentaries, because it's so relevant. But the way that we're learning it tonight is that the Chacham is not actually the prime son that we're talking to on Seder night. He's too wise, he's not open to listening, and his heart is not there. So if you're too wise, then we have nothing to say. You're a lost case. But if we go forward, the two final sons, even though they're less wise, they don't know. They're actually the ones that we're talking to the deepest. We're telling them the story because they're opening to listening. If they're open to listening, then we can finally talk. So even if you are alone on Seder night, you should be asking yourselves the questions in order to remind yourself, okay, there's a story that is being told tonight about the Jewish people, a story that is thousands of years old, but tonight, on this very night, it's relevant for me. And I have to make sure at the beginning of Seder night that I myself am open to that question. What does this night mean for me tonight? Not last year, not 2 years ago, not 3 years ago. And for sure, I would say in the last half a year, there's not one of us that cannot think of Seder night in a new way that we could have not imagined of 6 months ago, in so many levels. And the level of what does it mean for me personally to be connected to the Jewish people, and the level of what does it mean that when we say Vihi Sha'amda, that every single generation there are those who are out to wipe us out. And I have to tell you that the feeling personally that I had this last sitting there this after Shabbat, it was one of the craziest moments in my life, or in the life of contemporary Jewish history, even, in which you're sitting there and you're told I was in Israel, I was supposed to be on a flight to Sweden, so I'm sitting there waiting for the news if the flight is going to take off before or after the rockets hit, and then you're sitting there and you're told, well, the rockets, the first wave has left, and they will probably arrive around 5 minutes to 2, which is a couple of hours from now. And I'm just sitting there. Obviously, I can't go to sleep, and I'm just sitting and waiting to see what happens. It was like a moment in which it reminded me almost of the the test on the atomic bomb, the first test that Oppenheimer, a scientist, the secret scientist group who were testing the first atomic bomb, there was a scientific calculation that the world might blow up at that moment that they tested it. But they said, well, actually, it's a very small possibility. It's like a very small percentage, but we might just blow up the world. So I felt something very existential on this last Motzei Shabbat, in which I felt like, is that it? Is Israel going to be wiped off? Are we sitting here? Like, it was really a very strong moment, but also that a strong moment of belief that like we say on Seder night, that they've tried to destroy us so many times, and at the end of the day, we are here. So for sure, for me, I'm just sharing personally, that moment and that experience is something that for all of our kids. I mean, and then the rockets hit, and then I was running for the shelter with my kids. And that in itself, it was just like crazy. I saw literally 70 rockets over my head, over our heads, as we're running with the kids to the shelter because we don't have one in our home. So that for sure, I'm just sharing my own personal experience of this last week and how that it will affect my Seder night, and all of our kids. But when we think of all we have gone through since October 7th until now, and the meaning that of being a part of the Jewish nation, for sure this year Seder night is Manishtana Laila Zeh. How has this Seder night changed us as people since last year, even till this year, going forward? So for sure, I'm sure that there's no one here who doesn't have something that Seder night really means a lot for them this year. And the idea is that when we ask the questions is to stop a second and to say, okay, let's talk about that. Let's not only read the Haggadah and read through the text, but it's an opportunity, as I do every year at Seder night with any one of our guests. And it took a while. When we were in Malmo, we had like 70. So asking every single person, what does this night mean for you? And that is no less important, I would say, than reading the texts of the Haggadah themselves, because our rabbis sat there all night until the morning, until their students had to come and tell them, hey, it's already, the night is over, So if we get so involved in the story itself and sharing with each other that the time just passes, that's amazing. And then we have the mitzvot of the night, and to connect with the taste, as we were talking about before, the taste of the matzah, the taste of the maror, through the very unique traditions that we have. So I assume that most of us have Ashkenazi tradition, which at the end of the day is quite similar, but some do not. Some have other traditions that they come from. My wife, for example, has a Yemenite tradition. So, the matzot that the Yemenite Jews have on Pesach night actually are very soft, like a pita bread. So it actually makes sense when you say korech, when you're wrapping it up, and they put inside because their tradition is so old, so they haven't changed it since the time they were in Yemen, when the temple was still existing. So they take lamb and put it inside the pita, right? The wrapped up matzah, and you have a shawarma, right? Like you can get a good one in Jerusalem, and right, and that's what they're eating. So it's so different than the Ashkenazi one that I'm used to, and it's so enriching to have the different traditions and to learn from each other. So the traditions, the storytelling, allowing ourselves space, allowing ourselves to be children, to open up to questions, to question each other, not to be afraid to ask questions, not to be afraid to share with each other, I think is a very big focus of Seder night. And the personal connection for us and what does it mean for me is very important. Not to be the wise son. Don't be too wise on Seder night. To try to be one of the last two sons, to be The one who doesn't know anything is great, or the one who may know a lot, but still is simple enough to just say, "What is this? What is this all about? What does it mean for me?" Right? The word "ma," right? Just what? What does this mean? Right? What does this mean for me? Manishtana, right? Mazot. What is this all about? So, if anyone would like to share anything, any thoughts, you are very welcome, because I've taken up almost all of our time. But if anyone has any thoughts about Seder night and what it means for you, you're very welcome to share. You know, we wouldn't have crossed the sea if the first one didn't dive in. So, anyone want to? Yeah, Benny, please, bevakasha. You just have to unmute.
Yeah. Sanda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Moshe David and everybody else. This is my mom, and she would love to sit in today, so I invited her, of course. But she would like to ask a question or tell something. So go ahead, mom. Yes. You talk about the four sons, the wicked one, and the what you call it? Well, the four sons with different minds. But I wonder, it is like a person with four sides. All people have all four sides, I think. So I think that if you think about the wicked side of you, you should forgive yourself and listen, because maybe it is difficult to listen if you cannot forgive yourself. That's what I'm thinking about it with the four sons, that I think about all people have the four sides. They are not all wicked, or they're not all good. There's something about everything. And you have to understand that, and to accept that all people can be different.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's a wonderful idea that also to forgive yourself for the wicked sides in you, perhaps, and to say it's okay. We're here on Seder night, and and that part of me is here with me. I think it's a beautiful idea to say that we are all each of these sons. I think it's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And also to allow us to forgive us and forgive the other, because as we said, at the end of the day, we're here after all of these days, and after all of these, years and everything we have gone through as a people, we are here together. We are here together, and we're here Seder night together. And also, so I think it's a beautiful idea, and thank you for sharing. And also the idea that, especially this year, we have no right to say to someone, "You are not welcome," when we have those who are still hostage, who cannot join, whose deepest dream and wish would be to be with their parents for Seder night, and to keep that in mind with us throughout the Seder, that we be there for them, and that we share everything we can in a positive way with each other, out of the responsibility of being Am Echad, of being one nation. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a beautiful idea.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share? It's so nice. Okay, so I really hope you share with each other on Seder night, as we spoke all of this evening, and that you respect each other, as the Mishnah said, right? That we come out of respect, out of allowing space and curiosity, right? Like children, the whole idea of children, as we talked about, be curious. There's so much to learn from each other, and that's what we learned throughout Pirkei Avot. I would say it's the most common theme. To be a wise person is to learn from others and there's so much to learn from each other's experiences. And what does this Seder night really mean for you? So I leave you with that open question to ask yourselves and to answer yourselves this Seder night. And we all hope for a miracle, B'ezrat Hashem, that this Seder really be a night of redemption in ways that we could not have imagined possible, and that we really start a path of leaving Egypt personally, to be free, and also as a nation. So, Chag Sameach. Benny, you wanted to say one last thing?
Oh, can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
I just want to bless you all and wish you all a peaceful Pesach. And I hope that I cannot help thinking about the hostages. It's like the people from Egypt when they were in captivity also. So let us pray for them. And I wish you all a free country and a nice and peaceful Pesach evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your heartwarming words.
God bless
Thank
you all.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us tonight. Chag Sameach to everyone. And may you have a
Sameach.
wonderful, wonderful Seder
Chag
evening.
Sameach.
Excellent.
Ach, Sameach.
Sameach.